The expansion adds La Vista to the fire department's coverage area. Tell us about the expansion discussions.
Great cooperative relationship. And I joke that I want to beat La Vista every time, but if I lose, I want to lose to La Vista. We just have a great relationship, and it's great for the area, and the better off either one of us is makes the other one better. So we have a great spirit of cooperation, but we also have a great spirit of competition. But in that realm, because we have that, I think that opened the door for that type of call to be made. And when that call was made, it was taken serious. And very honest with Mayor Kindig, I said, very interested in the conversation. I won't do anything if it's going to cost Papillion more or reduce our safety. But as long as we don't jeopardize our costs and our safety, back to the idea of helping us all, I think it's a great idea. But that's also based on, people say this is historic. It's really not. We did this 11 years ago, and it's worked very well. The Rural Fire District and the City of Papillion came together almost 11 years ago and created the joint fire department that everybody has seen for the last 10 years. We serve over a 60-mile square area. We go all the way down to the Platte River from Papillion's fire department. So this isn't new. We already had a two-party agreement. We knew the governance. We knew how money was split. We knew who made the decisions. We knew who was in operational control. We knew how policy was determined. And really all we were doing is taking an agreement between two trusted parties and adding a third trusted party to that. And so in that sense, it was not historic or new. We're adding another trusted party to the dance.
You know, every year we look at all of our departments to make sure that they're providing the service to the citizens that we think they should be, and we evaluate everything from the service they provide to their budget, and the fire department was no different. So on a yearly basis, we've always looked at is it still providing the service. And what led up to this was we did a more thorough study to look at our volunteer fire department. We looked at the number of volunteers we had, their response times. All of that factored in probably to the decision to merge with Papillion. So the study showed that we had many options, but the one that we chose that we think is best for our citizens was to go to a paid fire department, merging with the Papillion Fire District.
Public safety is what we're doing, and what the Papillion Fire Department will be doing in La Vista, and it's going to be very noticeable to them, and it's time they need, and they should have it. As much as I like to be a volunteer, there comes a time when you can't handle it anymore, and I think that this is the right way to go, and it'll be an asset to the whole area.
What is this costing the residents and taxpayers?
The agreement that was put in 10 years ago between the City of Papillion and the Rural Fire District set up a proportional split of the budget. So from an operational perspective, it is the City of Papillion's fire department. They are City of Papillion employees. So operationally, it's ran by Papillion. And so we established the budget in cooperation with our partner. But when that budget is approved, we split that budget based on our proportion of certified land value, property valuation. And in the previous model, the Rural Fire District actually paid probably close to 60% of the bill, and the City of Papillion paid 40% of the bill. When we add La Vista to the agreement, the total budget goes up because we're adding 12 firefighters to man the other two stations. So the total cost goes up. However, we now have a third paying partner, and we're going to follow that same model. So when we look at the valuation, we'll look at the rural valuation, we'll look at Papillion's valuation, and we'll look at La Vista's valuation and split the budget proportionally. So the pie is a little bit bigger, but the piece of the pie is actually slightly smaller. And in La Vista's case, if they would have jumped to, just to give a sense of comparability, if they would have jumped and built a full-time career fire department And there's multiple methods they could have gone, but if they would have gone that way, versus the method we're in now, Mayor Kindig has indicated they're saving probably about $2 million a year by being in the partnership as opposed to a standalone. And the trick is, you've got 3 people paying the bill.
It'll be absorbed into the general fund, the extra cost, but that extra cost, to be honest, isn't that much. If La Vista would have started their own paid fire department, we would have needed approximately 24 firefighters to fill the need. By merging with the Papillion Fire District and Papillion, 12 firefighters have been added. All of those costs are split amongst the 3 entities, and to be honest, in the long run, this is a tax savings to our citizens. We probably save close to $2 million a year by doing the merger.
What about the shift from volunteer to full-time firefighters?
Whenever you're transitioning from volunteer to career, to me, the most important thing in that transition is the people. And the majority of those people are the volunteers and the heritage and the history. And the biggest mistake I think somebody can make is just saying, we're done with volunteerism, we're now a career department, move forward. Don't forget the rich history and the traditions. That's what got us here. That's the foundation we're building upon. So we need to find a way to honor the history and traditions, honor the volunteers as we move forward in the growing future with the paid. And that was a struggle in Papillion. That transition, depending on who you talk to, probably took 6 to 7 years to get through that type of transition. A lot of culture. But we're there now and it works. La Vista's got to work on that now, and they're having those conversations, and I'm not privy to them because I don't want to get into them, but Mayor Kindig and the La Vista Volunteer Fire are having conversations of how do you keep the history and the traditions alive, keep the history alive. What's the changeover ceremony to honor the volunteers while we move to paid? What's a role of a volunteer in the future? In Papillion, we still have the PVFD Inc., which is the volunteers. They still do the pancake feeds and they raise money and they place AEDs in daycares and churches. So the volunteers, a different role, but still have a role. So it's not an insignificant thing, and it needs to be thought about and it needs to be honored.
I think it's the thing to do. We're growing, we're going to keep growing, the area keep growing, and when you sit down and total up the three areas, 3 entities involved, you're looking at over 60,000 people population, and that's way too much for a volunteer if you had the volunteers. But nowadays with the training that's required, the time it takes, it's just not something the volunteers could handle very readily.
This was the most difficult, or at least one of the most difficult decisions I think that myself and the City Council had to make. I come from a volunteer background. I've donated a lot of my times for many years, and I know that you give your heart, you give your soul, you give your time, you give your commitment. And in the case of the volunteer fire department, those aren't just friends that they're making out there. They become family with the rest of their volunteers. And when we had to tell them that we were going to disband, I knew that there was going to be anger. I knew that there was going to be the questions of, why are you doing this to us? The volunteers have given a tremendous amount of service to the City of La Vista for over 50 years and served the city very well. It really came down that we just weren't able to retain the number of volunteers that we needed. So I understand the frustration and the anger, but I just want the volunteers to know that I've always said that they've joined the La Vista family. And I know it may be difficult at this time for them to understand that, but the citizens of La Vista, the elected officials, all of the staff, they're still going to remain a part of our family. And we just want to tell them how much we appreciate what they've done for us. And without their effort in this transition period, it wouldn't have gone as good as it could have. So the utmost respect the volunteers deserve, and I hope that we can in somehow maybe as we move forward in this, make sure that future generations remember what the volunteer fire department. We're looking at doing some type of a memorial. We hope to have some news on that soon. But I think it's real important that future generations know that one reason that we're such a great city was because of the efforts of our volunteer fire department.
What can people expect?
There are probably two things where La Vista residents will notice a difference in the service that they're going to get. One is that response times will improve. We're going to have people in the stations 24/7 available to respond. In addition to that, and kind of a little sub-point to that, will be that we've got the resources of, the easiest way would be a 4-station fire department that we can respond to calls in La Vista and Papillion. So we'll have more resources immediately available to us. So that's the first thing that's going to be great for the La Vista residents, that better response time and more response capabilities. The other point would be our involvement in community activities. They'll see us in the schools, we'll be involved in La Vista Days, we'll have an open house. We'll just be very involved in the community, so people will see us out and about and be able to interact with us an awful lot too.
How does the expansion affect coverage and response times?
In the big picture, we'll have a community of about close to 60,000 people that the fire department will be serving out of 4 stations. Obviously, those 4 stations are in the more heavily populated areas already. Those people who have acreages and more remote subdivisions, really not much is going to change for them, except that there'll be more people, more equipment available to respond to incidents at their homes. But in the populated areas, then, we've got 4 stations that are going to be nearby. So it won't be so much, is this a La Vista call or is this a Papillion call? It's a combined fire department call, and we'll be able to send whoever's closest to them. So I think a better service will result from that.
Well, I believe though, La Vista people will notice a big difference in response times and the professionalism of the firemen. I don't like to say that because the volunteers were trained very well, but with a paid firefighter, you have continuous training, and it shows. And when they're worked with people that are having the emergencies, they know how to handle things a little better because they're trained and in contact with it more often. Response time will be the big thing that people will notice.
How is this fire department's growth unique?
It's exciting. When you look across the country, mostly at large city fire departments, they're downsizing. The cities don't have money. People are moving out of those big cities into suburban areas. A lot of those fire departments are downsizing, and they're trying to figure out how do we lay people off and how do we provide any meaningful level of service with fewer people. Whereas here, it's almost the opposite. This community is growing, the area is exciting to be a part of anyway, and on the fire department side of things, going from 2 stations to 4 stations overnight, hiring 12 additional people to help us staff those stations, it's great work. I'm thoroughly blessed to be here, and I'm just very fortunate to be able to be part of this whole process.
What logistics does the expansion take?
It means that we're going to be covering a different response area, different risks associated with a different response area. One of the things that we've done in preparation for the transition to covering La Vista's EMS and fire calls is our crews have been out doing what we call FMZing that fire district, meaning they're visiting the businesses in the La Vista Fire District, learning the streets in La Vista, learning where hydrants are located. When they do a business visit, they'll actually pre-plan that business. They'll locate where the gas and electrical shutoffs are. They'll note any hazards that are present in that building. They'll note the layout of the building. And it's called a pre-plan. We document that, and it's available to the 3 different crews that might respond to an incident at that scene. We've looked at GIS mapping, which indicates where the call volume is located at in La Vista. And if we find an area, for example, apartment complexes where there are a lot of calls, our crews will actually physically go in and drive through those apartment complexes to note where the hydrants are located, to note what kind of access to those buildings they'll have with an aerial device should there be a fire. knowing where they can get a vehicle turned around at. Those are things that, if you don't do it ahead of time, present problems for you on an emergency scene. So those are things that we're out doing now and have been for the last 2 or 3 months.
The other tool that we have is mobile data computing. We have a computer in the truck that will show us best routes to locations. It'll show us fire hydrant locations. It'll give us, say on a business occupancy, it'll give us detailed information there, water shutoffs, gas shutoffs, all that type of thing. So we've got a lot of that information built into the computer already. Now we're accessing it not only for Papillion but for La Vista as well. So it helps with that learning process.
Will training change under this expansion?
We'll be expanding our training a little bit in different areas. One of the things that we're going to get exposed to in La Vista that we're not exposed to now is they have a rail line that runs through their fire district. We've already received some training through Burlington Northern on how to respond to incidents involving train car issues. That's something that years ago Papillion had a rail line, but we don't anymore. So that type of training we've exposed the staff to. In addition, there'll also be a portion of interstate. Responding to calls on the interstate are different than responding to calls on a city street. There are different safety factors and different considerations you have to take into account. La Vista has a portion of interstate that they cover, so those are things that we'll have to expand our training on. But the bulk of our training will remain the same.
We look at it as a big thing, and it is a big thing, but I still look back and say, we are two communities, two cultures. There is a difference between, you talk to locals, and I'm a Papillion person, and here's why, or I'm a La Vista person, and here's why. And the communities are proud of their separate identities, in a lot of ways they should be. But there's a lot of things that go on behind the scene that, again, we may be brothers that fight all the time, but we're still family type scenario. Behind the scenes, for years, we've cooperated. Even things as simple as we're maintaining our parks and a mower breaks down and we've got a big event coming down. We've got an interlocal agreement with La Vista that says they're a phone call away, and if they've got some equipment and people, they'll come over and help us out because they know it's going to happen to them and we'll be there to help them. So we've had those type of interactions over the years. So whether you're talking something as simple as a mower for a park, or at a point, a budget year where we each need to buy a piece of specialized equipment, well, why do we both buy both pieces? Why don't we buy one, you buy one, we'll have an interlocal to share. Those types of things happen all the time, and public's probably not even, average person's not even aware of those. So to get to the point where we're doing the same thing with the fire department, because we did it 10 years ago with rural fire, it almost just seems natural of what we do. In a lot of ways, I'm not feeling it as a major historic event. It's just what we do.
You're going to see more efficient services. You're going to see 4 stations that are staffed 24/7, available for calls. Between the two communities in our rural district, we have a lot of equipment now that we're able to send to different calls. Whereas in the past, we'll call it a simple house fire. That's kind of our basis for reference. A simple house fire would tap all our resources, plus we would need to bring outside resources in. Now we can handle that on our own, and we can handle probably one more call on top of that. So that's a really big change for us. So we're going to be a little bit more self-sufficient in that regard. So you're going to see improved level of service all the way around the board. We're going to be able to keep those services available in town, which is always important for us. And we're actually going to be used as a resource to communities outside of us, whereas before we need to bring resources in, now we're going to be a bit more available to send resources out to our neighbors to help them when they need it.
Everybody is looking at this as a positive. It's an opportunity. We're very comfortable with the service we provide. We think we provide a great service. We think that moving that service up to La Vista, they'll be very pleased with it. So I think the majority of the staff down here are looking forward to the opportunity to provide that service to the citizens of La Vista. And it goes beyond just the fire and EMS response. you know, we're involved in a lot of public relations activities. We do hydrant parties, we hold open houses, we go to all the schools, we read to the kids at the schools. And while there's some of that occurs now in La Vista, we think we provide that service, and we're looking forward to expanding those services to the citizens of La Vista.